Business leaders, pro-democracy activists send letter asking Biden to withdraw as a $14 billion Walmart heir joins Novogratz urging Biden exit. President Biden fights critics calling for him to drop out, asserts he's most. Business leaders, pro-democracy activists send letter asking Biden to withdraw as a $14 billion Walmart heir joins Novogratz urging Biden exit. President Biden fights critics calling for him to drop out, asserts he's most qualified to beat Trump in high-stakes ABC News interview. Putin unlikely to congratulate Starmer on election win, announces Kremlin. Putin congratulates Pezeshkian on his election as Iranian president. Donald Trump congratulates right-wing pal Nigel Farage on UK election win, but ignores new Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Rishi Sunak resigns as Tory leader as well as PM after election defeat. Hamas says it rejects any statements about foreign forces entering Gaza. Turkey's Erdogan hopeful on Gaza ceasefire, says West must pressure Israel. Haberturk reports. Hamas briefs Hezbollah on proposal for ceasefire. Hezbollah welcomes step, sources say.
Putin says discussed principles of Europe's future security architecture with Orban, and from Orban to Putin, we do not feel safe. We see the images of war and destruction, as Russia and Hungary continue cooperating on basis of pragmatism, announced Putin. Serbia vows unwavering Russian support despite Western pressure, says Deputy PM.
Reuters reports, Philippines turned down U.S. help amid South China Sea tensions, says military chief, and China anchors monster ship in South China Sea, Philippine Coast Guard says. Japan calls Chinese buoy in its southern continental shelf regrettable, and U.S. sending dozens of new fighter jets to Japan bases in $10 billion force modernization. SCMP comments as China treads complex path between North and South Korea as nuclear risk rises.
Iran's role in October 7th attack will be proven beyond doubt. ADL says, recently, Iran's Khamenei says region needed the October 7th attack, and Palestinian presidency hits back at remarks by Iran's Khamenei on October 7th attack. Hamas accepts U.S. proposal on talks over Israeli hostages, Hamas source says, and Hamas clears the way for a possible ceasefire after dropping key demand, officials say. Montreal police remove protesters from pro-Palestinian encampment at Victoria Square.
Newsom says, Trump wants to take us back to a pre-1960s world. Trump denies knowing about Project 2025, his allies' sweeping plan to transform the U.S. government, as Donald Trump claims Republicans' Project 2025 has nothing to do with him. Abysmal. Italian Premier Meloni rebukes the youth wing of her far-right party for glorifying fascism.
Biden makes another blunder. Says he will beat Donald Trump again in 2020, as Biden is at peace if he loses to Trump. Says as long as I gave it my all. And Biden says only the Lord Almighty could make him drop out in pivotal TV interview. Biden says, is able to counter Putin, contain China.
Online reports falsely claim Biden suffered a medical emergency on Air Force One.
NVIDIA gets rare downgrade on valuation concerns after rally. Rating agency S&P sends debt warning to U.S., France, and other top economies. Musk suggests late Twitter disclosure was a mistake, seeks to end lawsuit. Boeing crisis, as more than 100 whistleblowers contact FAA. JP Morgan warns customers, prepare to pay for checking accounts. FTC warns Gigabyte, Oshrock, and Zotac about warranty stickers.
Underground network smuggles NVIDIA's AI GPUs into China despite U.S. sanctions. Some smugglers even sell entire servers. Silicon Valley steps up screening on Chinese employees to counter espionage. OpenAI's internal AI details stolen in 2023 breach, NYT reports. Global Times comments as, European leaders, businesses oppose European Commission's tariff hike on Chinese EVs. EU slaps Chinese electric cars with tariffs of up to 38%. BYD's steep EV discounting in Thailand sparks backlash, PM seeks assurances. Accord's 19% plunge can't stop Honda's rise by 12% this year.
Reportedly, millions of Malaysians dip into retirement savings to make ends meet. As inflation soars, Myanmar shop owners are jailed for raising wages. Canadian unemployment rate rises to 6.4%, with student summer jobs especially hard to come by. India will fail to plug jobs gap even with 7% growth, Citi says.
NATO has 2 to 3 years to prepare for reconstituted Russian army, top Norwegian general says. UK's Labour Party to continue supporting Ukraine in war against Russia and on its way to NATO. As Marine Le Pen promises French far-right will rein in aid to Ukraine, slams soccer star Mbappé. As Le Pen says Mbappé should not lecture French voters. NATO's Stoltenberg rules out Ukraine land for peace deal.
Trump wants secret records, case paused after immunity ruling, and former Trump staffer alleges campaign settled seedy suits in bombshell filing. SBF's family controlled $100 million in political donations. Far-right, including France's National Rally, use AI to support political messaging, reports say.
To $214 million a missile. Reportedly, Russia has forced the West to ramp up production of older weapons, even gear it wasn't making anymore. China's latest stealth fighter jet J-31B ready for military service, CCTV video post suggests.
Sister of North Korean leader Kim calls South Korea's live fire drills suicidal hysteria. China's new interception radar can track 10 hypersonic missiles at Mach 20. Iran's naval destroyer has sunk, state media says.
Daesh protesters demand end to civil service job quotas. In Spain, tourism industry protests against the reduction of working hours. Bars and restaurants will earn 20% less.
Boeing to plead guilty to fraud in U.S. probe of fatal 737 MAX crashes. Apple unfairly sacked analyst who took secret photos of female colleague. Sherry Redstone and Paramount co-CEOs tell employees Skydance has a clear strategic vision for the future, and David Ellison set as chairman CEO, Jeff Shell as president of Paramount. Sherry Redstone to sell family empire to Skydance Media in $8 billion deal.
Religious phrases okayed on army headstones, including appeal for divine vengeance. YouTube rules not to remove anti-Hamas Israeli song despite protests from pro-Palestinian activists, employees. Starmer says Palestinian state undeniable right as part of peace process and no future for Jews. Prominent French Jews decry far left's gains in vote.
JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America and 7 megabanks paying $46 million over alleged conspiracy to rig trillion-dollar derivatives market. The Federal Reserve could slash rates by 200 points over 8 straight meetings as the economy heads for a sharper downtrend, Citi says. Japan's base pay rises by most in 31 years. Part-time workers see robust gains, where Japan's real wages down 1.4% in May, declining for record 26th month.
Hospital, Ukraine says. India's Modi tells Putin that heart bleeds over deaths of children in war, and Zelensky says Modi is a huge disappointment for hugging Putin. Russia's UN envoy says Norway supplied system-fired missile that hit Kyiv hospital, and Kyiv hospital took direct hit from Russian missile, UN analysis suggests.
NATO backs effort to save internet by rerouting to space in event of subsea attacks. Ottawa buys Arctic hangar next to NORAD base after Chinese, Russian interest. Germany, 8 other Baltic Sea nations seek to jointly buy naval mines.
Taco Bell announces a luxurious San Diego retirement community experience. U.S. universities warn students about LimeWire and Kazaa. In 2024, Baidu robotaxis draw complaints from human drivers. As service gains popularity, 2 months ago, Baidu launches robotaxi that costs less than half of earlier model, and it has been speculated 2 years ago that China's Baidu to dispatch robotaxis in 100 cities by 2030.
Workers have quit quitting, for now. Dyson to axe around 1,000 jobs in Britain. Global PC shipments rise in second quarter, Apple sees biggest jump, IDC says.
Reportedly, Toyota linked with F1 return with Haas not McLaren. Rimac turns 15 and celebrates with $2.5 million Copper Nevra special. Ford Capri to make a return as an electric SUV. 2025 Mazda CX-50 adds a 38 miles per gallon AWD hybrid.
Labour launches £7 billion wealth fund to unlock investment in UK. Majority of Germans supports reintroduction of wealth tax. Asia's worst stock loser erases Thai founder from billionaire status. Musk beats $500 million severance suit over mass Twitter layoff. 1 year ago, Elon Musk, Twitter slapped with $500 million lawsuit over former employee severance payments. HP discontinues online-only laserjet printers in response to backlash. Instant ink subscription gets the boot, too. Morgan Stanley's chief strategist Mike Wilson warns the stock market faces a 10% correction ahead of the U.S. election.
Tesla's share of U.S. electric car market falls below 50%. Lawsuit accuses Hyundai of faking U.S. sales data for electric cars. J.P. Morgan hikes BYD's price target by more than 80% on Outlook, and BYD to build $1 billion EV plant in Turkey, production to start by end of 2026.
China's Xiangqi is looking at a lithium plant in Europe to supply electric car batteries. QuantumScape's stock soars as company inks new deal with Volkswagen unit. Bolivia says Brazil could be its partner in the industrialization of lithium together with Russia.
3 EU citizens detained at Russian spaceport. China's iSpace Hyperbola 1 rocket fails soon after launch, losing 3 weather satellites. North Korea expands works to dismantle railways on border with South Korea, reports Yonhap. Turkey will not be party to conflict in Ukraine, president says, and Erdogan informs Zelensky that he begins working on revival of grain deal. Indian state refiners in talks for long-term oil import deal with Russia, government source says. Iran proposes to connect BRICS payment systems, announces foreign ministry.
President Joe Biden says, no good reason to talk to Putin right now. F-16s head to Ukraine to begin flights this summer. U.S. decides on how deep into Russia Kiev may strike with U.S. missiles on daily basis, says Biden. 2 months ago, it has been reported as Biden secretly gave Ukraine permission to strike inside Russia with U.S. weapons.
Former Israeli hostage sues U.S. nonprofit who employed Hamas operative, who held him captive. Israeli army acknowledges October 7 failures, including slow response and disorganization. U.S. will soon end its troubled Gaza peer mission, Pentagon says.
U.S., Canada, and Finland form Ice Pact to project influence into Arctic region. France, Germany, Italy, Poland agree to jointly develop long-range cruise missiles. Army of the future will need to work on reprogramming people, Burrell believes.
Cathie Wood defends ARK strategy as outflows continue. MicroStrategy sets 10 for 1 stock split 4 months after Bitcoin peak. Musk denies NYT report that SpaceX plans to build city on Mars, and Elon Musk denies volunteering his sperm to help start a Martian colony. Recently, New York Times has commented as thermonuclear blasts and new species inside Elon Musk's plan to colonize Mars.
Biden and Harris administration announces nearly $2 billion to support American auto workers convert facilities for electric vehicles. Lithium-ion batteries a growing source of PFAS pollution, study finds. Audi revived a never-built, 16-cylinder supercar from the 1930s. 2025 Mercedes-AMG GT63 Pro 4MATIC Plus combines active aero with 603 HP. EU accuses Elon Musk of deceptive practices over blue check mark. Nissan, champion of sedans, is reportedly going to kill the Altima and Maxima. 2026 Genesis GV60 Magma confirmed to enter production next year. Radical new Fiat Panda EV to arrive in 2025 from less than £22,000. Autocar.
US says it will deploy more long-range missiles in Germany. Russia vows a military response. Russia says U.S. missiles in Germany signal return of Cold War. Scholz says U.S. long-range missiles in Germany to help securing peace. Ukraine can use French weapons to strike targets in Russia, but not Kremlin, announces Macron's advisor, and Zelensky says to win the war, U.S. needs to lift limits on striking military targets inside Russia. Keir Starmer gives go-ahead for British missiles to be used in strikes against targets inside Russia.
Russian pilot handed over data of those responsible for the strike on Akhmedit Children's Hospital. Russian-born couple charged with spying offense in Australia. Germany decries Russian plot to assassinate Rheinmetall boss.
Peru extends interest rate pause over core inflation fears. JP Morgan forecasts earlier start to Federal Reserve rate cuts after CPI data. Inflation in Germany slows slightly to 2.2% in June.
Boeing warns customers of further delays on 737 MAX amid crisis. CEO of Goldman Sachs-backed startup SLYNC. Sentenced to 20 years in prison. U.S. diaper makers warn EU of shortages under law to save forests.
Biden warns China's Xi of price over aid to Russia as NATO summit ends. China tells NATO not to create chaos in Asia and rejects label of enabler of Russia's Ukraine war. Japan warns on China, North Korea in annual defense report. As Japan Defense White Paper says, China's military ambitions, greatest strategic challenge to the world.
Erdogan proposes summit with Putin, Assad to address Syria's domestic situation. Kyrgyzstan's intelligence services thwart attempted coup. Slovak PM Fico makes first public appearance since assassination attempt.
Russia conducts mobile nuclear missile launcher drills after tactical exercises with Belarus. Italy to order 24 additional Eurofighter Typhoon fighters. Taiwanese fishing crew interrogated for allegedly operating in Japan's waters.
U.S. and Republic of Korea concerned. DPRK may send troops to Ukraine. Putin, Kim have reportedly discussed possibility, and Ukrainian partisans blow up Russian railroad track used to transport ammo from North Korea. Hungary's Viktor Orban makes surprise visit to Moscow, angering other EU leaders, and reportedly, Hungarian PM leaves Moscow before rainstorm. Borrell says Orban doesn't represent EU in Russia. Orban calls it Brusselian nonsense. Spain's Vox and Dutch Freedom Party join Orban's Patriots for Europe.
Reformist Pezeshkian wins Iran's presidential runoff election, besting hardliner Jalali. Jeremy Corbyn re-elected in Islington North after expulsion from Labour. Former Taiwan Vice Premier under investigation on suspicion of bribery. Keir Starmer names new cabinet, with Reeves as Chancellor and Rayner as Deputy PM, and Starmer kills off Rwanda plan on first day as PM. Reportedly, Labour's David Lammy aims for UK foreign policy reset. Rachel Reeves becomes first female Chancellor. As PM, Starmer appoints cabinet. Sinn Féin largest Northern Ireland party in UK Parliament for first time.
Israel's Netanyahu insists on Gaza ceasefire deal, allowing resumption of military operations. Palestinian deputy labor minister killed in Israeli strike in Gaza City. Israeli protesters block highways, call for ceasefire to return hostages 9 months into war in Gaza.
China and Belarus hold anti-terror military drills on Polish border. Pope decries populists, warns democracy is in bad health. Hungary's Orban arrives in China on peace mission for Ukraine. In China's, she calls on world powers to help Russia and Ukraine resume direct dialogue, as Hungary cancels visit of Germany's Baerbock amid row over Orban and Putin meeting.
Intelligence on Russian sabotage threat prompted increase in security at U.S. military bases in Europe. New York man and Canadian national plead guilty to multi-million-dollar export control scheme, for which electronics used by Russia in missiles and drones. Justice Department leads efforts among federal, international, and private sector partners to disrupt covert Russian government-operated social media bot farm, as Russia's state-run, RT News Network, developed and Federal Security Service operated the AI-enhanced bot farm to disseminate disinformation, to sow discord in the United States and elsewhere.
Tests in U.S. to stoke outrage and distrust, intelligence chief says.
U.S. blocks court hearing for migrants on UK-owned Chagos Islands. 1 year ago, UK agrees to negotiate with Mauritius over handover of Chagos Islands. China's Coast Guard says, allowed Philippines to evacuate sick person in East China Sea. 3 days ago, Philippines accuses Chinese Coast Guard of blocking 6 soldiers' evacuation. In Japan, Chinese man held over red toilet graffiti at Yasukuni Shrine. Anything South Korea can do for Ukraine's defense ability will be warmly welcomed, announces NATO official. Ukraine is mobilizing more propeller planes to shoot down Russian drones, World War I style. Trudeau holds high-level talks in Washington as he faces pressure to boost defense spending.
The Jerusalem Post comments as, how an addiction to the Iron Dome doctrine has eroded Israel's deterrence. Top rabbis order yeshiva students to ignore IDF call UPS, amid brewing coalition crisis. U.S. to resume sending £500 bombs to Israel, while withholding £2,000 bombs, official says.
In the U.S., House passes bill to ban non-citizens from voting in federal elections, 63% of French people in favor of a new constitution. Bloomberg comments as, French elections result is least worst outcome for business. Paris to continue arming Ukraine, parliamentary elections to change nothing, announced politician. Russia foils Ukraine bid to hijack Tu-22M3 strategic bomber. Security Service says, in the UK, Labour to seek joint declaration with EU on wide-ranging security pact.
Bolsonaro awards Milei with the immortal, unbreakable and inettable medal. Indian Prime Minister Modi makes first visit to Russia since the start of its war on Ukraine. Erdogan to restore relations with Syria to how they were in the past, as Erdogan says Putin looking at holding meeting on Syria in Turkey.
Philippines says, U.S. mid-range missile system to be pulled out. Japan and the Philippines sign a defense pact in the face of shared alarm over China. Malaysia sends diplomatic note to UN after Manila claims Sabah again and will defend against territorial claim by the Philippines, says Tokmat. 3 weeks ago, Philippines files UN claim to extended continental shelf in South China Sea.
Reuters reports, Europe seeks industry views on China's older generation chips. China making it very difficult for EU to deepen ties, says Ambassador Jorge Toledo. Bangladesh PM's China visit to feature 2022 Memorandum of Understandings, no agreements, announced by Hassan. In the U.S., prominent Congress House Democrats want Biden to exit 2024 race. Biden says, we must unite America again, in speech at Philadelphia church before traveling to Harrisburg. Harris puts focus on beating Trump, not concerns over Biden, as she tries to appeal to black voters, as U.S. Democrats view Kamala Harris as only possible replacement for Biden, commented by Wall Street Journal. France set for political gridlock after left-wing election win, as Reuters comments, corporate France braces for new era of political turmoil, and in French elections, second round turnout by noon highest in 4 decades. French bond futures, Euro slip as left success sows fiscal doubt. Germany's first African-born MP to stand down after racist abuse. Reuters reports that India races to build power plants in region claimed by China. Efforts to delist Taliban from Russia's banned groups going well, diplomat says. No Uyghurs from Xinjiang went on Hajj pilgrimage, data shows.
A Russian court orders the arrest of opposition leader Navalny's widow, who lives abroad. Swiss government adopts more EU sanctions against Russia. China's state-owned defense firms pledge to tackle corruption. Gaza toll could exceed 186,000, Lancet study says. Senator quits Australia's ruling Labour Party over disagreement on Palestine. Rwanda says UK migrant deal did not stipulate return of funds.
That Russia will not prevail promises Ukraine newer defense systems. NATO allies confront serious gap in arms production to counter Russia, and Russia lacks munitions, troops for big Ukraine offensive, says NATO official. Netherlands to accommodate damage commission on Ukraine, announced foreign ministry.
Russian tycoons pocket $11 billion dividends on war economy boom, and State Duma approves bill on corporate tax increase. Saudi Arabia threatened to sell off European debt if G7 seized Russian assets, claims the report. Rich Chinese return to Hong Kong as Singapore steps up scrutiny.
French prosecutors probe Le Pen over 2022 campaign financing. Donald Trump poised to win more Latino votes than any Republican in recent history. Putin accepts PM Modi's request to release Indian military recruits on Russia and Ukraine war front.
Gay furry hackers claim credit for hacking Heritage Foundation over Project 2025. Alex Jones turns against Donald Trump over Project 2025. The UK politician accused of being AI is actually a real person.
Intelligence officials say as U.S. intelligence official indicates Russia prefers Trump as election victor. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez backs Biden. He is not leaving this race. In the U.S., sailor tried to access Biden medical records multiple times, Navy says.
Bob Menendez entitlement led to cash, gold bribes, U.S. says, and Senator Menendez's defense says, focus on gold belies lack of bribery evidence. Hunter Biden ends bid for gun retrial after prosecutors explain appeal process. Supreme Court, Justice Sotomayor's bodyguards shoot would-be carjacker outside her home.
Top CEOs, including Apple and Walmart, skip 2024 presidential donations. Trump teases Marco Rubio at Miami rally as VP announcement nears. MAGA Senator Josh Hawley advocates for being a Christian nationalist.
Chinese military simulations of attacks on U.S. air bases in Japan alarms Tokyo. U.S. Coast Guard patrol spots Chinese naval ships off Alaska Island. Ukraine will weaken, not strengthen NATO if it becomes member, says Hungarian minister, and Hungary will not support NATO becoming anti-China bloc.
Prove NATO attempts to cooperate with Israel. In Spain, government partners and 500 groups present a law to impose an arms embargo on Israel. Iraqi court sentences wife of slain Islamic State leader to death for crimes against Yazidi women.
Trump considering cutting back intel sharing with Europe, officials warn. Scholz says Europe faces threat from incredible arms buildup by Russia. Danish Prime Minister calls for giving all her country's air defense assets to Ukraine.
Split in Polish far-right confederation, as half its MEPs join Germany's AfD in new EU grouping, as Germany's AfD and extremist allies set up second EU Parliament far-right group. Hungary is blocking Poland's EU funds for Ukraine military aid. Germany to bar Chinese companies' components from core parts of its 5G networks. In a first, Republican majority on a Nevada County Commission refuses to certify election. Trump claims not to know who is behind Project 2025. A CNN review found at least 140 people who worked for him are involved. Exactly what our movement will do. Unearthed clip shows Trump endorsing work on Project 2025, he now claims he knows nothing about. Far-right Project 2025 overtakes Taylor Swift and NFL in Google searches. In the US, prices fell in June for the first time since the start of the pandemic, as inflation cools in swing states crucial for US presidential vote, and US voters say they will consider economy when choosing between Biden and Trump. The S&P 500 returned an average of 11% in the second half of election years, with an incumbent running for re-election. UK ministers preparing King's speech containing at least 30 bills. Biden backs Starmer's bid to renegotiate Brexit and bring UK closer to EU. UK mortgage holders helped Labour to landslide win, study shows, and Labour's landslide victory sees UK housebuilder stocks surge. Singapore has approved 16 insects to eat as food.
Donald Trump attacks fake movie actor George Clooney after NYT op-ed. 2 days ago, George Clooney announced, "I love Joe Biden, but we need a new nominee." President Biden on really good form in talks, UK Prime Minister Starmer says. Trudeau praises Biden's world leadership as pressure mounts on US president to quit race.
Reportedly, potentially dozens of Democrats expected to call on Biden to step aside after NATO conference, and Biden vows to stay in 2024 race even as NATO gaffes risk his campaign. As reportedly, Biden won't drop out of election against Trump unless polls say there's no way you can win. It has been commented as, Daily Show reveals Trump clip so bonkers, they had to say they didn't alter it.
Pew Research announces, amid doubts about Biden's mental sharpness, Trump leads presidential race, and majority of voters view Biden and Trump as embarrassing, as per poll. Obama, Pelosi privately expressed concerns over Biden, and Pelosi moving behind the scenes to get Biden to reconsider presidential run. NYT editorial board calls Trump unfit to lead.
Russia to occupy remaining Ukrainian lands after ceasefire, says Medvedev. Ukraine to be invited to NATO when allies agree and conditions are met. Reportedly, Poland prepares Ukrainian Legion, several thousand, already registered.
Donald Trump asks judge to toss hush money conviction over immunity ruling, and in the U.S., Senate committee to probe Supreme Court's Trump immunity ruling. Former French First Lady Carla Bruni Sarkozy charged with witness tampering in husband's campaign case. Clarence Thomas accepted a free yacht trip to Russia and got flown out on a complimentary helicopter ride to Putin's hometown, 2 Democratic senators say. Bitcoin set for worst week in nearly a year on Mt. Gox liquidation fears, as Mt. Gox begins repaying Bitcoin to creditors a decade after exchanges collapse. German MP urges government to halt BTC sales, in lieu of need for strategic reserve. Nigeria set to develop indigenous blockchain, Nigerium, to foster data sovereignty. UK court freezes Craig Wright's assets amid $1.9 million legal dispute. Gensler says, FTX is not unique, warns crypto exchanges are commingling functions. Ethereum's TVL drops to $37.87 billion, experiencing a 12.63% decrease in a week. North Carolina governor vetoes bill to prohibit CBDCs in state. Central Bank of Nigeria faults Binance for carrying out unauthorized transactions.
Lionel Messi promotes obscure meme coin on Instagram, leading to 350% surge. Alipay drives evolution of contactless payments in China with new tap and pay service, as Alipay adds support for NFC mobile payments. U.S. national debt equates to 614 million Bitcoin at current prices.
Bitcoin ETFs on ASX. Spot Ethereum ETF launch anticipated on July 18, Bloomberg ETF analyst. Ether ETF fee race begins as Invesco reveals 0.25% charge, slightly higher than VanEck.
Co-founder and former CTO of Paxful pleaded guilty to conspiracy to fail to maintain an effective anti-money laundering program. Former FTX executives Nishad Singh, Gary Wang to be sentenced later this year. Standard Chartered's crypto arm eyes buying billionaire's crypto OTC firm, claimed in the report.
OKX picks Malta over France as Europe hub to comply with EU's MiCA crypto rules, claims sources. DAO-specific legislation isn't needed yet, English legal body says. U.S. Congress House fails to override Biden's SEC veto of bill that would end controversial SEC guidance.
U.S. lawmaker asks Congress to treat Binance executive in Nigeria as a hostage. Kraken partners with Atletico de Madrid. In South Africa, Dalil calls for meeting with new Public Works Minister, following our $300 million cybercrime theft probe.
Ethereum Community Conference, ETHCC7, kicks off in Brussels, and Ethereum core developers discuss consensus layer changes in 137th meeting. Malaysian crypto miners stole $722 million worth of power, claim energy official. Donald Trump announced as keynote speaker at Bitcoin 2024 conference.
Crypto's $100 billion in illicit flows swamp stablecoins, exchanges. SEC ends Paxos BUSD probe, suggesting stablecoins are not securities. Global cryptocurrency exchange BitMEX pleads guilty to